Let's go. Boom. Welcome to Make Shit Happen, episode number 156. My guest today is Mark Hopson. Mark has known me for a long time. Mark is not only a friend, he's like a mentor. He's taught me a lot about furniture business, and his knowledge about furniture business goes way far. I mean, Mark, thank you. Welcome to the show. Thank you for accepting my invitation and coming over here and talking about how furniture business has evolved in the past, past 15, 20 years, more than anything. And I know you've been in furniture business because your dad was in the business.
That's correct. First off, I first met Sam. He had a little store in Almeda Mall, and it was he and his dad. And I don't know how many years ago that was. It was a long time.
I think it was 23 years ago.
23 years. So I've seen Sam from this little store, just being the hard-working guy he is, to build this great store business that he has today with all these big stores and all. He's really truly the American success story. Yes, I've this is my 44th year of being a sales rep, but my knowledge goes back further than that because my father was a rep, and I started going to the furniture markets in Dallas in the summertime, and my first one was 1967. I was 12 years old. I graduated from college in December of 77 and started working for him as a rep in January of 78. So it's very easy for me to keep my anniversary of when I started. So Dallas market is no more now, but as far as furniture, but known a lot of personalities and seen this business change a lot.
Yeah, and you've probably seen inflation happen a couple of times, and I mean, 40. If you've been in 44 years, you've probably seen about 9 or 10 presidents change. And I mean, things have happened.
Well, I think right now, the number one thing when I first started to now, 44 years later, is the only comparison I have to what's happening to our economy and our industry today. And let me go back to January of 78 when I started. Mm-hmm. I come home graduate from college in December, and my dad. The plan was for me to be his assistant, so I was doing that. I was never a scholar to be a lawyer or a doctor or anything, so this is my entry into business. And at those times, of course, there weren't fax machines or cell phones or anything, and they sent out mailgrams, which was faster than the regular mail. And his company that he was working for at the time said, "We will not accept orders this month." Mm-hmm. In other words, don't work. Our backlog is so big. Now let's go back to that. December of 77, January 78, Jimmy Carter was president. Mm-hmm. Inflation was rampant, out of control. Factories were having price increases every 3 months. Their backlog was usually 6 months. So they had to raise their prices every 3 months because they didn't know what materials were going to be 6 months from now.
Pretty much exactly almost the same as right now.
Exactly. Now, obviously, hopefully it'll never get that bad. CD rates were 12%. 1981, I was getting married and bought my first townhouse. The interest rate on a condo was 13.5% variable. Wow. I'll never forget, I walked in, it was supposed to be 13.5 fixed. And they said, "We've changed our mind. It's 13.5 variable, and if you don't like it, there's the door."
Wow.
And did it. So that's how crazy it was. Let's pray that things don't get that bad again. But I guess the similarities, that was all a domestic industry at that time. There were no imports in 1978. But backlogs were 4 to 6 to 8 months to get furniture. You had inflation, you had price increases every 3 months, and inflation feeds on itself in that your customer comes in and you tell them the sofa's $4.99 or $5.99, whatever it is today, and the salesperson goes, "Well, that's what it is today. I can't tell you what it's going to be next week." Mm-hmm. So it creates a frenzy in inflation, and So we've gone a generation without inflation. Because I was a young man at 23 years old then. I'm a lot older now, but that's a generation that has not experienced, and our nation has not experienced inflation for a generation.
Well, I mean, that rapid inflation. I mean, inflation happens every year, but I mean, that big change, that big percentage.
But if you take the furniture industry in particular, we've actually had deflation because the year 2000, and I remember distinctly, is when the dam broke and imports started coming in and proliferating, and between 2000, 2005, 6, it destroyed our domestic industry. They all closed up and became marketing companies. Mm-hmm. So, this is the first. When that happened, we actually had deflation or price stability. As we kept every other industry, cars went up, TVs went up, but we were still selling $4.99 sofas for 20 years.
We're still selling $4.99 sofas.
and and bedroom suits went down and everything. So we had, in the furniture business in particular, we had a long deflation or stationary rate for a long time.
Yeah. So Woody, let's talk about, I will come back to, what is going on today and how everything is changing. But talk about you growing up in Houston and just seeing Houston changing.
Well, I was born and raised here. I've never left. The only time I've left was the 4.5 years I went to school up in Nacogdoches. Houston was I just tell you, I grew up in a neighborhood called Briar Grove, which is near between Chimney Rock and Hillcroft off San Felipe.
Yeah.
And I was born in 1954, and in 1957, my parents bought a house in Briar Grove. Mm-hmm. If you can realize, Briar Grove in 1957 was the end of the world for Houston. That was on the prairie. Uh-huh. In fact, San Felipe at that time dead end at Chimney Rock. You had to go down either Woodway or Westheimer to get to the neighborhood. It wasn't until about 1960 that San Felipe was extended to Hillcroft. So that was the end of the world. So at Houston, and Houston's just grown and grown. But I just remember, obviously society and everything's changed, but you didn't work. Kids always played out in the front yards, and it's an easier time at that time. And you got to think about it. I mean, that was the World War II generation. We were, they had all, our parents had been in the war as young people, and now they were married and having kids. So it was a different time period and different way of life back then.
Yeah. And I mean, so if you still live in that area today, it's crazy. I mean, traffic. Traffic is crazy. I mean, they just closed the loop from 59 to 610, that little thing. And I mean, it's not the end of the world anymore. It's like the center of the city.
Well, that's right. I tell you, I'll go back even further. As a little boy, the Galleria had a amusement park called Wee Wild West on it. That property was an amusement park, and they had some animals like ponies and stuff, and little rides, trains and stuff at that time.
Really?
And that, I remember going to Wee Wild West as a young child, and they sold all that land, and the Galleria was built.
Then the Galleria was developed. So Galleria got built in front of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, interesting how things have developed. But traffic today is just insane. Used to be a rush hour morning and night. It seems the freeways are packed 24/7. It doesn't matter what time.
Yeah, on the Galleria, everything is packed over there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what time you're going over there.
That's right.
So it's crazy. So let's go back to furniture business now. Okay, you said you've been in furniture business. Basically, you saw your dad since you were 12 years old. Tell us a little bit about that time.
Well,
walk us back to memory lane.
As far as is going to market, look, it's common to do kind of what your dad did. If your dad's a lawyer, you tend to go to be a lawyer. If your dad was a doctor, you do that. If your dad was a hunter, you tended to be a hunter. So it's just natural that I gravitated to what my father was doing. Obviously, I would go and observe and met a lot of people at that time that in the business. I guess what was so different about that time than now is the amount of stores there were. I mean, there was like 4 times the amount of retail establishments there are now, and competition. Generational, those people got older and the kids didn't want it for various reasons. And I think obviously the import industry changed the retail landscape. And how did that happen? Well, in the year 2000, before it was a domestic industry. So the big box store only had a very small percentage discount. He could buy in a train car or a truckload and could save a little bit on freight and maybe get a small discount, but generally the mom and pop retailer buying one at a time didn't pay the same price and virtually as the big box guy. He didn't have that big of an advantage. But after 2000, with the advent of containers, that big box guy now has a 25% advantage over buying one at a time out of a domestic warehouse. That's what really destroyed, in my opinion, so many stores, along with these other factors I talked about. But the price advantage domestically was not that great, but that changed everything when you can't compete against 25% cheaper price.
Yeah, and I mean the big boxes came with a lot of, I'll say frills, and I mean, a little more glamour, glitz and glamour.
Exactly, but all of that. But even in the small towns, they've gone away a lot. And again, part of that is generational. No one to take over, and obviously the internet has changed things. People can buy on the internet for whatever, and it's just all evolved. But the price is where you really compete. So that changed everything.
So tell me about if you really think the price is where you competed. Do you really think today is still the case like that, or do you think the smaller stores just take a less margin?
I think there's been such a reduction in stores. People, as you know, people shop around now and they take pictures and then they go home and then they go on the internet and see what the price is, and they want that price, but they don't want that service, because they always come back and say, oh look, I can buy it on the internet for this, and then the obvious answer is, well, if you want their service, I'll give you that service for that price.
But what I've realized is internet is, in furniture business especially, is not that big of a factor in the pricing. I mean, in some cases even more. I think people buy them on the internet because they don't want to get out. They're just a little lazier. They don't want to travel. They don't want to go to the store. They don't want the inconvenience of going back to the store and talking to somebody. Because I mean, and that's what, obviously I'm blessed to be in furniture industry, because internet still has not taken over because of the pricing, or the speed, right? Because in most cases you can get the furniture from buying from a store faster and sometimes cheaper.
Well, obviously the biggest problem for furniture on the internet is logistics. The size, the weight, having the product, who can move it. Also, you got to have assembly a lot of times and deluxing.
Yeah.
All of that, you just can't take it out of a box and stick it in your house. There's a lot more processes to that, and the internet does not offer that.
The internet doesn't offer that, and it's just too big. It's too big to move, and too many chances to damage.
Exactly. And that's why not that many people start doing it in the internet because it opens up. It's got a little scratch that could easily have been fixed at the store, the warehouse, and the prep. But that customer goes, no, I don't want. What do you do with it then?
Yeah.
The company doesn't want it back, so their losses are huge,
Yeah.
or a bigger percentage than a store would be.
But even on the internet, they're still internet has affected retail in a big way, and if you don't mind me saying, when I first got in furniture business, I made money selling little stuff because little things was leading into big victories,
Mm-hmm.
right? Little wins lead into big victories. That lady who was coming to us looking for the hall table will end up liking a bedroom set and would want to change the whole bedroom set or whole living room set. That customer who was looking for that hall table or just a curio or little daybed or little futon or little bar stool is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because they now look on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So the traffic has went down. And I think that affected a lot of small moms and pops because they didn't have big advertisement budget like these big box stores do. And there's stores who that advertisement budget is gone. So if they weren't advertising, they weren't inviting enough people, and the walk-in is what small stores and a lot of stores really depend on to grow their business. So tell us one of your favorite stories growing up. Tell us a big furniture store you went to that is not no more in existence.
Well, I remember Finger Furniture.
Uh-huh.
And of course, the owner and operator of that was a man named Sammy Finger. It was he was a great merchant, and my father had known him for years. To back up, my father had been a rep, but before that, he had been, which aren't sold that way anymore, but he sold a brand called Kelvinator refrigerators at that time, and they had sold to Finger. So he had gone way back with Mr. Finger. And I remember they had a store on Gulf Freeway originally, and then I remember going to the opening of the big store where the Houston Buffs baseball field used to be when they opened that in the 60s, and that was kind of a revolution how big that was compared to everybody else at the time, and a huge thing. And of course, Mr. Finger was very flamboyant. He'd have promotions. He'd bring athletes in and all. And of course, since the stadium was there, he had a room in there that was a museum with a home plate and all. And he personally collected a lot of memorabilia. And of course, they had soft drinks and stuff they gave away, but he'd have athletes come in and sign autographs and things and bring people into the store. But he was kind of the first flamboyant, and he personally wasn't flamboyant, but his style of retail was. And I'll tell you one story about him that I remember. I'm a young rep. It's 1986. Mm-hmm. And the Astros were in the playoffs, and the playoffs were going on. And at that time, he didn't come into the store all the time. He stayed at home, and he would summon people. And the line I was working had a new division come out, and I was told to go to his house and see him to show him this new division that we were introducing for him to look at, which I did. And the Astros were playing that night again, I think game 2 of the playoffs, against the Mets, I believe. And he just casually said to me, do you want to go to the game tonight? Well, of course I wanted to go to the game that night. So he says, well, I'll see if I have any tickets left, because he had numerous seats in the stadium. Mm-hmm. It was at the Astrodome at the time. Uh-huh. So sure enough, about 4:30, 5 o'clock, I get a phone call. He says, Mark, this is Sammy Finger. He goes, meet me at my house at 6:30, and and you'll be one of the guys that go to the playoff game tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But that was huge for me that he even recognized me or knew who I was, let alone the kindness of I wasn't a big hitter or some big shot. Mm-hmm. So I was one of about 8 people that he took to the game that night.
Oh, okay. So who was the other couple? Do I know any of them?
Well, the one guy was probably one of his best friends was a rep at that time. A guy named Charlie Nevels, who's not with us anymore, who represented Snottig at the time. And then I think we were the only 2 reps, and then he had various other people there. And I didn't sit with him. He had like 3 sets of tickets, but we had good seats where we were, but he had a box seat, I think, that he personally sat in.
Nice. So you remembered that, huh?
I remember that.
That was, you were probably 30, 31 at that time?
Yeah, in my 30s at that time.
Yeah, 30s at that time, so you remember. What other furniture stores, or you saw the expansion of Fingers, and then you saw the demise of Fingers, and...
Yes, I did. It was very sad. I think they got caught in a situation. This is just my opinion. I don't have, exact facts, but basically, in my opinion, they expanded way too fast. They came into an agreement with Ashley to do Ashley Home Stores. That was a big enough commitment on its own. But not only did they do that, they built or leased and transferred their warehouse at the same time they were doing that, and on top of that opened another Finger store. So they did 3 major projects at the same time when they should have, hindsight's 2020, probably do one at a time. The economy shifted right in the middle of that a little bit, and there was a downturn, and with that much expansion, Bobby Finger was running it at that time, and Fingers was owned by the Sammy Finger family and the Aaron Finger family, brothers, and they owned it 50-50. Bobby didn't get along with the other side of the family that much, in most people's opinion, and he had to pay them off, so that was a big a commitment he had to do to get them out of his hair, so to speak. So all of that cost too much money, and with a little downturn,
and then he got diagnosed with terminal cancer,
pancreatic cancer, and that was in the middle of all that too, and too much, too quick, and a slight turn in the economy. They were overextended and went down. Some of the deals they made should have not been made at that time. Well, or you do one at a time. You don't do three at a time.
They were such a staple at that time.
Big name, Houston institution, and gosh, it was a sad day for our city to have that happen.
Yeah, because me as a little kid, I remember one time, and I was not even in the furniture business at that time. I think I was 17, and I went somewhere, and my mom at someone's housewarming party, and some lady was like, "Oh yeah, I bought it at Fingers." I'll never forget that. I was just, we bought that at Fingers, and that was like a big deal that we bought it at Fingers.
Well, they were huge advertisers, and as Bobby got in the business, he kind of became the spokesman, and kind of like you're the spokesman now on TV. And remember, at your fingers.
At your fingers. He got pretty. Yeah, he had a flamboyant personality also.
Yes, he did. It was a great institution, and it was a shame that it happened.
Yeah. Well, you probably seen people come and go. Like people came from other cities. And Houston has always been a little hard place to crack. There's
a lot of tombstones at the cemetery of people who came to Houston and thought they were going to conquer, and Houston's not as easy to conquer. There was a store from Canada called Leon's.
Yeah.
They had a place on the North Freeway that's now the Toyota truck place. That building was originally a Leon's building. They didn't last too long. Another one, there used to be a company out of the southeast called Rhodes Furniture.
Yeah.
And at the time they had a division called Crossroads, which was more of a kind of Levitt's type with just a warehouse. They were on the South Loop, and that store ended up becoming Finker's Warehouse, but they didn't last long.
Yeah.
Levitt's had two big stores here for a long time. Their demise and left. And I think one of the greatest ones was a Haverty. Houston is like the one and only, or very few, you can count on one hand how many towns they've ever left in. And they had been here forever. But as the Haverty's wasn't quick enough to change with the times. They had been here a long time, so they had some older stores and older neighborhoods. And as time goes on, neighborhoods change, customers change. So they had a hybrid of stores in old neighborhoods and new neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods didn't buy the same type of product. And Haverty's just picked up and left. And like I said, you can count on one hand how many times they've done that. So, and they're still in business today, and very strong company.
Very strong company.
So that's a big name that didn't hear.
And Leon is big company.
In Canada, they're one of the top 3 in Canada.
Maybe top 2.
Yeah, and they also went into, at that time, I think, Arizona, and I don't think they're in Arizona either. But the Canadian business and here were completely different.
Yeah, and then Levitt's came over here, and they were huge. Helen Myers.
Highland Myers never came into Houston. They did have some stores. They did have some stores in small towns. They were more into small towns.
Yeah.
A lot. Oh, another one from California is no longer in business. It was called RB Furniture.
Okay.
Just RB.
The initial RB.
Yeah, and they were from California and were going to conquer the world, and they didn't last long here. And so Houston's been a hard market to crack, and it's a diversified city, and I think you have to have they're loyal to their stores here, and you also, just like you have to have diversification of locations. Traffic is so bad today. Very few people are going to drive an hour to go somewhere to shop for furniture, spend an hour, and then drive home for an hour. That's half a day. You have to have multiple locations to be successful. People will venture out for 30 minutes, but not an hour and a half to go somewhere.
Yeah. Why do you think, Houston was so hard to crack for some of these people?
I just think the strong stores, both Fingers and Star Furniture were family stores of Houston. They lived here, they grew up here, and I think the Texas spirit too. When an out-of-towner comes in, I think it's a little bit different today than it was then.
Yeah, because we have all heard stats, right? Like, the new generation don't have any brand loyalty, do not have any loyalty, this. Millennials and the new, I think what they call Generation Z or something like that, they've changed, there's no brand loyalty. So, you think, like, back in the days, there was much more loyalty?
I think there was a Texas loyalty, Texas strong and all, and there's still that, especially in my generation still, that, Texas, it's just a strong place, and Houston, second. And I think back in all that which we talked about was way back when. I can think of only really one new guy that's come to Houston here recently. But I think it was too strong a market to crack because of the loyalty of Texas owned and Houston owned and operated.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to the economy that was when you first started and stuff. And before the interview, you were telling me about there was there was a time that you went to market and the manufacturers will tell you not to take any orders.
Well, like I said, when I first started, I think I talked to you, my father said that the company said we're not taking orders. So here I am starting out on the road cold calling, and much like now, it was like a frenzy. What can I get? I'd sit down with people and they go, when can I get it? And most stuff was 4 to 6 to 7 months to get it. But the factories could only produce so much, and their backlogs were out so far. So we go to market. In December, we're not supposed to sell anything. We go to market, and the company I was working for had 2 factories at the time. Here you're at a market, and the management says, we'll accept orders from factory A, but we will not accept any orders from factory B. And here you are at a market supposed to be selling product. And this went on and off for most of 1978. So my father and I, what we did was we'd go around and we'd take orders, but we wouldn't date them. You gotta remember, there's no fax machines, there's no emailing and all. Everything was postal mailing stuff.
Yeah.
So then we'd get the email that said, okay, we'll accept the mailgram, but we'll accept orders. We'd date them all that day and put them in a big envelope and mail them off. And sure enough, a month later it'd go on. This went on and off all that year. So that's how hard goods were to get. And very similar to now with the disruption in supply chain, and we've sold our soul to overseas, and we're at the mercy of these steamship lines now, and I'll make one comment about that. I think you hear about transitory inflation and all this. You never hear anybody on the news or economists talk about the real reason of inflation, in my opinion. You pick a number. This country imports 80-90% of everything it sells.
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic, a container cost about $3,000. Today, it costs $15,000.
Right.
5-fold. Inflation cannot get better until that container rate goes down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
and nobody's talking about that at all.
And Mark, a lot of people don't realize that they're like, what is coming out of the container? This water bottle that we are drinking out of, water out of, that bottle comes out of overseas. Yeah. Comes from China.
Yeah.
Okay. The mics we are talking in comes from China.
80-90% of everything comes from.
I mean, everything, and people are not understanding the handles, the door handles, the drawer handles, the hinges, the knobs. Yeah. Everything comes from overseas, and when these container prices go 5-fold up, all of a sudden the price, the companies still have to make a profit, and nobody can absorb it for that long of a time.
That's a pure landed cost number. And the furniture industry is at its worst. Take a water bottle or a hinge or whatever, you can get millions on a container. So it only adds up a few cents or maybe $1. You can only get 18 bedroom suites on a container. Yeah. The container doesn't get any bigger. So you land 18 at $3,000 or 18 at $15,000. That's a raw number.
That's a raw number.
And it's a big number.
It's a big number. And I mean, but it's just like there's inflation going and everything. Price of bread has gone up. Price of milk has gone up. And also one more thing that you're right about the ocean freight and the transit freight and all this stuff. But another problem that I feel like the inflation is going on is people, because we don't have enough people working. Right?
Well, I think I'm a true believer, and I know it depended on your stripes, but when you give an extra incentive to stay home. So if a person stays home to watch TV, watch their kids for whatever reason, and make $700 a week, and the option is to get the job and work hard and make $800 a week,
I'm staying home.
It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out what you're going to do, and I don't blame that person.
Yeah.
And so things can't turn around in the job market till that when they start making $350 a week instead of $700 a week. they'll start looking at the job market again.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard. And I mean, so a lot of companies, like we were talking about this consolidated warehouse where they bring the goods and they ship. Well, they can't, if they don't have enough people, warehouse people, to load and unload furniture, or load and unload commodity, or load and unload goods, all of a sudden it goes up. Lumber price goes up because there's not enough workers. Steel goes up. Okay, food goes up. I mean, there was a big shortage of fry for chicken wings.
Yeah,
a shortage of meat, shortage of flours is because of the people. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we depend on people, and we will not tackle inflation, or we will not tackle, and we cannot guarantee a stronger economy for going for the years if we just tell people stay home, we'll pay you money.
Well, that's exactly right, and specifically we're talking about transit and freight. So whoever you're buying that stuff can have it in stock today and have it on a truck in 2 days. But because that freight carrier doesn't have enough drivers, doesn't have enough warehouse people, this is a fact. Pre-pandemic, the freight companies were delivering in 10 to 12 days.
Uh-huh.
Now it's 30 to 40 days. Who does that affect? Well, that warehouse guy is that guy who would probably make $800 a month.
Yeah.
So he's staying home, and the truck driver, same thing. It's those kind of essential people that they're making a choice right now.
Yeah. And I mean, we have seen, companies like Walmart and, fast food restaurant. I went to, I don't remember, it was I think about 3-4 weeks ago. I had gone to somewhere to go get, some fast food or somewhere. I don't remember exactly what it was. And there was a sign on the door. It says, "Sorry, we have closed. No one came to work."
Golly.
And it was 6:37. And I mean, that business owner gets affected big time. I went to get some sunglasses the other day, and the manager of that store is one of my best friends who passed away a couple of years ago in a motorcycle accident. It's his sister. So I went to the store, just to see her and buy some sunglasses. And I get to the store, and it's at the Sugarland Mall outside the town country, outside the Sugarland Mall. And there's a sign said, store will reopen at 3:30. And it's 3:15, 3:20, so I can wait. And I walk around and I waited. So I got over there at 3:35. And my friend's sister, Cynthia, she's there. And I could tell the look on her face, she's not happy. And she was she tells me that, she doesn't have any employees. She said she doesn't have any employees. She's worked 6-7 days now for last, 6 months. She can't find employees. She get employees and they leave in, 10 days or 12 days and don't show up. And she said she had somebody who was working she had somebody who came and covered up for her from 10 to 2, but they couldn't stay and she couldn't get over there, so they had to shut the store down for 45 minutes. And I mean, a lot of these retailers and companies, they're losing money. And I mean, if we don't fix this, I mean, we'll just see a whole bunch of real estate vacant.
Well, I had a similar, April's not that long ago, and I was in North Carolina for the market, and I went to an Outback restaurant, and I go in their defense, at that time they had a 75% capacity, so there was a few but there was a lot of empty tables, and she told me it was going to be an hour and a half wait. And I'm going, what's the deal, all these empty tables? She goes, "Sir, I'm sorry, I can't get enough help." She goes, "I hire them and they come for 2 or 3 days and they don't ever come back." Yeah. She goes, "I can't get people to work." And this lady was maybe 30. She wasn't an older person and stuff. And she goes, "These young people don't want to work." Yeah. And so that experience of right there, a restaurant has to turn away business because they don't have enough help.
Yeah, I have really good friends in restaurant business, and they all tell us the same thing. And so they got to pay more for people to stay, and that causes inflation, and that causes price hikes and stuff like that. So, I mean, we have to fix this. We cannot. I mean, this has gone long enough. We have helped people, and not only furniture business, the business I'm in, it's just the whole
economy.
The whole economy, and I mean, I'm hoping that that will help. So, Mark, you've been in furniture business for all this time, right? And you've seen styles come and go, import starts, the local production, the local factories go away. But now all of a sudden, you work for a factory that is produced locally in the United States, and people are now like, we can't depend on these, foreign countries. We can't depend on these trade. We don't know when they're gonna make it. Malaysia now has been shut down for
a month,
over 4 weeks, a month, right? And we don't know when they're gonna open back up. And when they open back up, and we know when people open back up, employees don't, they're not in a rush to get to work.
Yeah.
And to get ramped back up, and they already had a 6, 7, 8 month backlog, right? And we don't know when the steam line, the shipping companies are going to pick up. It's a disruption.
Yeah, big.
That has happened, and we don't know. We think Malaysia, they might not get caught up for about a year and a half, 2 years. Vietnam is already, which between Vietnam and Malaysia, I think it's 70% of our goods, furniture goods, are coming from there. Vietnam is in bad shape. They have 1/3 of the factories closed. Big disruption.
The worker shortage.
A lot of furniture is not coming from China anymore because of the 25% tariff that President Trump had imposed. There's very little furniture now coming from China. I think only like less than 8%. And China is a disruption. Do you think it's an opportunity for local factories to reopen again? Do you think local factories will reopen again?
Well, I can only speak specifically to the furniture industry. I think obviously the opportunity is there, and you hear of an Intel going to open a big chip plant in Arizona and stuff like that. But the furniture industry, let me just tell you why, as far as wood products, will not come back because of our current laws. Under our current EPA laws, to build a factory and to get the permits to run the finishing lines, because the finishing materials are very toxic, fumes, all this stuff, and rightfully so should be regulated. But our current laws versus what they can do overseas makes it totally financially uncompetitive to do that.
Really?
And now, could our laws change? Yes. Do I think they'll change in the current political climate of, Green New Deal and all that? No. But that's the reason furniture factories will not come back to this country. That's the number one reason.
As far as the wood goes, I mean, there's still a lot of,
you can do upholstery and different things, but as far as
most of the upholstery is produced over here.
finished wood products would be, if you wanted to pay double or triple, that it could happen, but nobody wants to do that. And it'd just be totally uncompetitive due to our emission laws.
Okay, so you don't think there'll be a lot of them opening? The people who are there, but the people who are not there.
Well, we don't really have. There's you can count on one hand how many people are here. As far as manufacturers, we have a lot of cabinet shops, but there's really no furniture really. The largest bedroom manufacturer left in America will do just under $100 million this year.
That's it.
That's it.
That's nothing. When we are selling, billions of dollars furniture, billions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they made a determination to be the last man standing. How are they in business? They never went out of business, and their permits are grandfathered.
Yeah.
So, but you can't replicate that today.
Yeah. You can't open up new factories
without costing quadruple.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons you think the wood shops are not going to come in.
They're not coming back. They're not coming back.
Now, isn't that like an opportunity for somebody like the one company you're saying? To grow?
Well, again, they had the factory with the permit, but they couldn't build another factory.
Gotcha.
Now,
So they're landlocked.
They're landlocked on that. Now, then it becomes a labor issue, because to grow, you would have to go to you could ultimately, the machines work 24 hours a day, so you could get a second shift and ultimately a third shift if you could find the labor.
Yeah.
But, generally, labor's hard to find for those type of jobs anymore also. They happen to be located in a very small town, and it's a way of life there, but there's not enough labor there for our second or third shift right now.
I hear you.
But that's the only way you could ramp up production is to have a second or third shift in that one factory.
What, you're a wise man, you've been in this business for a long time. What do you see? Say if you're the man on helm, what would you do different, or how will things become will get better? Let me just put it that way. How will things get better? I mean, does that have to be government involvement?
I don't think so. I think the marketplace, I think my personal belief is in a lot of cases government gets in the way more than it does. I think capitalism is very successful, as we've seen, and the cream and the smarter guy rises to the top, and you can figure it out. I think part of the problem is we've gone to a global economy. It's just not here anymore where we can make decisions and control things, which we were up until the year 2000. It's only been 21 years since all these factories went away here.
But I mean, we can't let the steamline shipping companies, take advantage of us. And I feel like there's foreign country influence.
Exactly. I believe that too. I believe it's being manipulated.
Yeah, I believe it's manipulated, and there's simply extortion. I mean, it's just a case of extortion. Not extortion. I mean, collusion. I mean,
collusion. Yeah.
So I feel like there's been collusion right there.
But we'll see what happens. I mean, I think we're already starting to see the pushback at, everybody accepted 8,000, 10,000, 12,000. I think we're starting to see a little pushback at 15,000, especially for medium low to low end goods. You can't sell a low end good for triple, quadruple what it normally sells for. The consumer won't buy it. So thus, people aren't bringing it over, that relates to supply and demand, and it'll eventually go down, hopefully.
Hopefully, but I mean, these shipping companies are making billions of dollars profit in a quarter. I mean,
yes.
I mean, they're really. I mean, I just feel like there got to be some kind of government involvement over here and saying, "Hey, stop."
Well, I think my personal belief is that China is manipulating the thing. I've heard stories. Now these are just innuendo that you hear on the street, but they're manipulating by actually taking ships out of service,
right?
To have less supply of ships to keep the price high.
Well, or restricting the container flow. I mean, basically, you can't load them fast enough and unload them fast.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, and you can do that, and I mean, and they can just all say, "Oh, well, we have shortage of people," but I mean, a communist country. I mean, I don't know how much is a country. Is the government's involvement, per se?
Well, they like selling to us. They like taking advantage of us, but they're not our best friends.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I totally agree with that. Mark, before we end this thing, is there a story that you would like to share with us?
I really don't. I've really enjoyed and continue to enjoy 44 years. You'd think at my age I'd retire, but selling is kind of like being a hunter. I still like getting up in the morning, and you eat what you kill as a hunter.
Yeah.
And to be able to sell anything, obviously you like big orders better than little orders, but even to convince somebody to buy something from you is a challenge every day, and I still enjoy that, and I think and I enjoy calling on entrepreneurs like yourself, and you get relationships with people and all, and after 44 years, there's not too many in this business I don't know or haven't met. So, and by and large, most of them are good people and people you want to be around.
Hey, Mark, you 44 years is a long time. It's an experience of it's a lifetime, right? And out in working the same kind of job, same kind of industry.
Very unusual
very
for
unusual.
one person to do the same thing for 40 years.
And I mean, let's just say, even in the same field or something like, sales or selling or something like that. What if you have to? I mean, if you said, hey, I learned this, or I want to give this lesson to people who are listening or something. What would it be, or what would you like to share?
I'll never forget this. My father told me this, and it sunk in.
Uh-huh.
And there's a few things your parents that you always remember. And I remember starting with him, and I remember sitting in Finger's parking lot.
Uh-huh.
And Sammy Finger had just come out, and my father showed him some products and all, and he goes, son, remember, you're not selling that name on the building. You're selling that person. And you need relationships. And the other thing he taught me, which I have kind of my golden rule, and over the years, there's been many times when some customer did me wrong or, treated me poorly or kicked me off their floor for no reason or whatever. There was many a time, you wanted to lash back out and say something. But he said, he always taught me, he says, lose the battle but win the war. In other words, grin and bear it and stay in it for the long haul, because you don't know, this business, people are recycled all the time, ending up different places, and you don't know where they might be a buyer here next time you see them or wherever. And so I've always done that. I've kept my tongue every time and never lashed out or told them what I really thought about them. Just nodded my head and kept a clean slate and kept my nose clean with people. And it's been hard at times, but I've always done that. And I think over the long haul, that's benefited me. And that would be my advice to someone in any sales or anything is don't let the fury or the heat of the moment get you. Bite your tongue and live for another day.
Live for another day. Hey, Mark, I've known you for 23 years, right? And I've seen you work hard. I mean, you're probably one of the hardest working sales rep on the road. I mean, and even till today, I mean, when you don't have to, right? You call, you show up. I mean, you don't see that. I haven't seen that in 23 years. I've seen so many reps. I mean, you can say 44 is a long time. I feel like 23 is a long time, right? People don't have same job for 23 years.
My parents came from, they lived the American story. They grew up in the Depression, and my father said they were the rich poor. They always had something to eat. I mean, we don't even think about stuff like that. We can't relate to that at all. Neither of my parents were able to go to college. They had high school degrees, but they lived the American dream and had a family and became middle class, very middle class. I've always remembered how I grew up and my roots, and I'm still that person, and you got to remember and keep your roots and who you are, and not let ego become to something, or that you are something that you aren't. We all put our pants on at the same and everything, and that's who we really are. So, I'm not anybody more, and I just saw the hard work they did to raise themselves from nothing to become good middle class people, and I've tried to live that same motto.
So how important do you think hard work is to succeed?
It's the 100% it. I mean, I see these, or I don't see it, but I still get get in the car and go every day. And if you call people, say, well, can I come see you or whatever, 9 out of 10 times they'll give you a reason not to come.
Uh-huh.
And I think what people like yourself tell me is these younger reps, they only want to call on the phone, they want to text you, and they want to email you. They don't want to come and see you. They don't get out and go. And it's still a relationship business, and you can't build a relationship on the phone or on the email.
You want me to tell you the crazy thing about you said about relationship? This morning, we have a conference call every morning. We talk to our managers, and anytime I have like a sales meeting or like company meeting, I tell everybody, I ask them a question. I said, does anyone remember the biggest sale they've had, in the last 1 week?
Uh-huh.
And people will raise their hand. How much was it? What? 6,000. How much was it? 8,000. How much was it? 9,000. Oh, okay. And then I asked them this question. I said, well, the person who sold the $6,000, what was their name? And all of a sudden they know the name. Oh, well, it was Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Okay, well, what did Mr. and Mrs. Jones do? They're like, oh, Mr. Jones works at this Dow chemical plant. What does Mrs. Jones do? Well, she's a school teacher. How many kids they have? Well, they have 3 kids. Oh, okay. What were they? Well, there were 2 boys, 1 girl. Okay. So why did they buy furniture? Well, they are moving from Leak City to Friendswood, and they bought a bigger house, and they had 3 bedrooms, and now they have 4. And my point right there is this: they know everything about that customer, right? Because they took the time to build a relationship, to get to know that person. And then I asked them, well, tell me the last sale you did not make. And the hands go very low. Like, well, what was the last sale you didn't make? Oh, I had a customer. What was their name? I don't know. What did they do for a living? No idea. How many kids did they have?
Well, I have a saying for that.
No idea.
And you've seen it. There are order takers
Uh-huh.
and there's salesmen.
Yeah.
And what's the difference? The order taker sits there, they come in and go, what are you looking for? A bedroom suit, okay. They go show him and they go, turn to the bedroom suit, you like it? That's an order taker.
Uh-huh.
When the customer might say, well, what's the price? Okay, and he gets lucky and sells something.
Yeah.
There's the other guy who engages, talks to him, knows everything about him, comes over to that bedroom suit, pulls the drawer out, explains everything. He made the sale.
Because he got to know them, show them what,
Yeah.
it took the time. Why is it important in sales? You've been in sales for so long, so we can say that, hey, someone to take advice from. Why is it so important to make that connection?
It's all human interaction. I mean, look, if you need a product bad enough, you'd buy it from the biggest jerk in the world if you needed it, but you don't like it. A lot of people tell me they buy from this big company because they have great service and great products, but they don't like being dominated by them, but they have to buy from them. But given a tie, they will buy from someone or try things from someone that they admire or like enough and give them a break. That's the tiebreaker in it. If you have the best product at the best price and gotta have it, you can treat people crummy, but it doesn't last forever. I've seen a lot of great companies that were the hottest thing at the time then, no longer in business today.
Yeah.
So nothing lasts forever. If you have a relationship, people will try things, and that's the difference. And I'm sure you've experienced that. There's people you buy from that you don't really care for that much.
Absolutely.
But they have a great product, and you got to have it.
I'm a big believer of a relationship, and I think it was you who told me several years ago, this is a relationship business. And I mean, I believe that it's not just relationship in business. I believe relationship is everything. I mean, matter of fact, I went to the Astros game with a friend of mine that I met 15 years ago who walked in my store to, try to get me to open up a store in a location. And I've done business with him for the last 15 years and, made friendship out of it. And we were reminiscing to that time. And I mean, I've had people just say, hey, well, cut him out of the deal. I said, well, I cut him out of the deal. I can save a couple of pennies today. But, I lose that relationship. And I mean, sometimes money relationship to me take precedence over money, and I feel like it's a full cycle, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, what goes around comes around, and you reap what you sow, kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've seen that. There are ruthless people. I've seen people get salesmen fired so they can get their 3 to 5% commission, and there's right. Ultimately, we all whatever you believe, look to a greater guy, and you got to look in the mirror. Is it right or wrong?
Is it right or wrong? I mean, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Is it right or wrong? I mean, you all got to die one day.
Yeah.
I've never seen. Have you ever seen a funeral? There's a whole bunch of cars behind that hearse, right? Hearse, and they have their flashers on. But I've never seen a brink truck following them.
Well, I'll tell you the other one. That's a good one. The one I have. There's a George Strait song, one of his #1 hits. On the Other Side is the name of the song, and one of the lines in that song is, "I've never seen a hearse with a luggage rack." In other words, you can't take it with you.
Mark, I want to be respectful of your time. We can sit over here and trade stories and talk forever, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to appreciate you coming to the show. Before I end the show, I want to ask you a question, and I ask all of my guests this question. Let's say today is the last day, right, and you ended up living 100 and some years, had a bunch of grandbabies and great grandkids, and you gotta go meet your creator, right? Mm-hmm. And they say, hey, Mark, I'm sorry, there's everything you've written, your memoirs, everything has, this podcast, any video, everything gotta go, but we're gonna give you a pen and a paper, and we want you to write 3 things for your future generation of the future world. 3 things. It can be 3 truths, 3 keys to greatness, 3 ways to live. What will it be?
Well, just basics. Be true to your Creator and live His Word. There's a 10 Commandments for a reason, and if you follow those, you're going to be a good person. And work hard. And the other one is treat everybody like you want to be treated.
Wow, like that. But be true to your Creator.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed sitting here and visiting with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks for sharing this all with us. I appreciate it. I truly enjoyed it. I hope people enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you.